question, input 5 numbers, find the sum of the 5 numbers. Determine if the sum is above 50 or not. So here we've got a question that wants us to input 5 numbers. We're going to use a for loop to input the 5 numbers. We want to find the sum, so we're going to have an accumulator to find the sum of the 5 numbers. And then we want to determine if the sum is above 50 or not. So when you read the question very carefully, you're going to use a loop, right? So I'm going to have a loop. So there's the loop. I'm going to get my number. I'm going to get the number. I'm going to accumulate the number, right? I'm accumulating the number. And then I want to determine if the number is above 50. And then here, outside of the loop, I want to check if the number, not the number, but if the total or if the sum is above 50. So what's important for you to realize is that this check that needs to be made is not inside the loop. The loop is going to help me to get all my numbers. That's what the loop is doing, helping me to get all my numbers. And once I've got all the numbers and I've summed them up, I want to check only once. I want to just check once. If you put the check inside the loop, that means the check is going to be done every time the loop executes. And that's not what we want. The question here is saying to determine if the sum is above 50. So after you get the sum, you want to determine if the sum is above 50. So let's look at how we would go about solving that. Right, I need 5 numbers, so I'm just going to start again. For x in range, right? Let me just take this out. For x in range 1, 6, that'll run 5 times. I need to input the number, so num equals input enter a number, right? But again, it comes down to the question that was asked. This input can only give you the value as a string. So because you want the value as a number, I have to do a conversion. So whatever number is going to be input in this statement, I'm converting that into a. Now I need to accumulate that. So we set accumulator sum equals sum plus num. There's my accumulator. I'm adding up. The minute I get the number, I sum it up. Okay, I've summed it up, but when I use an accumulator, I must set it to 0. In the loop, I need to check. That means if sum is greater than 50, we want to output a message to say the sum is greater than 50, else means it's the opposite. Print the sum is not greater than 50. So there we are. What's key to your understanding here is that this is the loop. That loop is going to execute 5 times. And then here is your if statement. And that if statement is going to execute once only at the end after it's done the check. So if I give it a run, it wants me to input the numbers 10, 20, 30, 40. Now we know that obviously that sum is going to be greater than 50. So when I test it, it says the sum is greater than 50. But if I enter smaller numbers like 1, 2, 3, 5, then it's going to tell you the sum is not greater than 50. The important aspect to understand in this question is the statements that are going to be repeated and the statements that are not part of the loop and will not be repeated. Someone may ask the question, but how do I know whether the statements should be repeated or not? And then it comes down to the question. You have to understand your question. Read your question carefully to determine what should be repeated and what is not required.